World of Warcraft Midnight is setting out to fundamentally change the game. The introduction of housing, an all-new open-world system called Prey, a third Demon Hunter Spec, and on top of all of that, we're going back to TBC basics, revisiting Eversong, revisiting Quel'Thalas, updating that part of the world to be more in line with the modern game. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, to go over, so strap yourselves in, everybody. Hello, 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 I am Jmulls, and let's get into this. Okay, so they just did a developer panel at Gamescom going over the zones, the delves, the dungeons, all that, and they showed off more footage of the actual zones, and like, my god, did they knock it out of the park when it comes to Silvermoon and just Quel'Thalas overall. It's exactly how I always saw that zone, just not confined to the limits of TBC graphics, you know? It's giant, it's colorful. I think it's some of Blizzard's best work aesthetically I've ever seen in this game. The Blood Elf aesthetic has always been one of my favorites in the entire game, if not just straight up my favorite. And I've always wanted just to see what this zone could be like. Again, if it wasn't limited by the Burning Crusade, it wasn't locked away. The fact that bringing it back and updating it and just leaning into how gorgeous this zone and this region of the world can truly be, while also trying to retain the visuals that it did originally have. Just updating them and just making it all bigger and bolder. And they did end up combining Eversong and the Ghostlands. We did kind of expect that they would do that, but my god, their use of color, the environmental detail, the design, the way Silvermoon looks, my god, the harbor, the gardens that are in the shape of a horde symbol, the banners that they have with the horde symbol, but it looks Blood Elven. I think they did an absolutely magnificent job with it, and it makes me want to level up some more Blood Elves so that I'll be able to explore the full city proper, because there'll be a small sanctuary area where the Alliance can also be, but they even said most of the city is going to be horde only, because it's still a horde city. And like the same thing with Zul'Aman, we always knew that we never saw the full scope and scale of Zul'Aman in-game. We only had the one raid and dungeon, and a very small area, but we knew that lore-wise, there's way more to it, and the fact we're going to be able to finally explore that part of the world as well, I think it has so much potential. I love the aesthetics of Midnight so much. It's everything that I loved about TBC. So what even is World of Warcraft Midnight? It's the second part in a trilogy of expansions called the World Soul Saga. The first part is the expansion going on right now, the War Within. Midnight is set to be the Empire Strikes Back, the middle chapter. And according to this blurb, return to the Elven Kingdom of Quel'Thalas as Xal'atath's invasion of Azeroth begins and the Void Storm threatens to cover the world in darkness. Xal'atath is set to be the big bad for right now, and it's beginning a process that seems like a world revamp. We're going back to Quel'Thalas, we're going back to Eversong Woods, taking that part of the world and updating it and fleshing it out, like actually being able to go to Zul'Aman, we'll get to that, and updating a zone that was introduced into the game with the Burning Crusade all those years ago and making it look more modern and updating it overall. What that necessarily entails, we need to stick around to find out, but in the next expansion after Midnight, The Last Titan, they're set to do that again for Northrend, because we're going back there for the final chapter of this trilogy. And then some people theorize, myself included, that the expansion after that will be a proper old world revamp. Though that's not confirmed at all, it's just speculation. But we have a total of 4 new zones with a new capital city. I say new capital city, it's Silvermoon, right? It's like we'll be going back to Silvermoon. And I know some people are a bit trepidatious when it comes to this because they fear that Silvermoon isn't going to be a Horde capital city and that it's just going to blur the lines between the Horde and the Alliance even more. Well, maybe this can alleviate your worries and concerns, because the way they're going to go about doing Silvermoon is they're not only updating Silvermoon and Eversong, right? But while Silvermoon City will be the new hub for the expansion, the Alliance doesn't have free reign to all of it. And there are going to be districts that are Horde only. So I imagine it would probably be something similar to like Dalaran, where if you went into the wrong room, it would just teleport you out. I think it'd probably be something like that for Silvermoon if you're Alliance. Whereas if you're Horde, well, it's your city, you would have free reign there. I'm personally really excited to see Silvermoon again. It was always one of my favorite locations in the entire game, and with it being a, TBZ location, it was rather limiting. limiting in terms of all the things you could see that were there, you just couldn't really interact with. But now that we have more modern tech, we have like skywriting, I just imagine we'll be able to explore those like floating platforms and buildings. It could be so dang cool. The legendary Blood Elf capital has been completely redesigned, serving as the Midnight campaign hub while both factions face new threats. And then the 4 proper zones. We have Eversong, with the Void Storm looming overhead and the renewed power of the SUNWELL. Eversong feels both familiar and new, filled with wonder, tension, and transformation. And then what I believe is one of the first 2 zones you'll go to, is like you have a choice between Zul'Aman and Harandar. But yeah, the Amani Trolls, they're back, baby! Homeland of Warlord Zul'Jin and the Amani Troll Empire, Zul'Aman is a wild forest steeped in ancient history. We also have Haranda, which many people speculated to have been the zone for 11.2, because it's the homeland of the Haranir, which is a race that were introduced into the game with the War Within, the current expansion. But we're actually going there in Midnight. Sitting at the confluence of the world tree's great roots, Haranda is an impossibly primordial jungle and the ancient home of the Haranir. Very much reminds me of the aesthetics of like Zangarmarsh with just a different color palette. And we're gonna get into this. This expansion really feels like the Burning Crusade all over again. Whereas I think the War Within was supposed to like feel like vanilla World of Warcraft aesthetic-wise. We dealt with Nerubians. We had a large focus on like characters like the Arathi, you know, humans and elves obsessed with the light. We also dealt with a bunch of dwarves. And I think with Midnight, it's way more clear that for the World Soul Saga, they kind of want these expansions to feel reminiscent to the first 3 main versions of World of Warcraft. Classic, the Burning Crusade with Midnight, and then Wrath of the Lich King with the Last Titan, since in that expansion, we're going back to Northrend. Haranda feels very reminiscent to, say, Zangarmarsh aesthetically. I mean, come on, Eversong was introduced into the game with the Burning Crusade. Zul'Aman was also a raid in the Burning Crusade as well. And then the Void Storm feels very much like Netherstorm, even kind of down to the name. Voidstorm, a distant, mysterious world shaped by the void where predation reigns supreme. While threats roam around every corner, new allies may linger in the shadows. Very much looking forward to seeing those zones in actual action. Love, love, love the aesthetics of this expansion so far. Absolutely up my alley. Before you put down roots in your own cozy corner of Azeroth, later this year, jump into our virtual tour for an early glimpse at the customization options that await you. Housing is one of the most anticipated elements coming into World of Warcraft, and it will change everything for so many people. An entire new way to reward the player base with content. With a housing system that looks far more customizable than many of us thought even possible for World of Warcraft since it's a 2004 game. So let's take a quick look over at the housing tour that is on their website. I'll leave a link in the description down below for anyone who wants to do this themselves. It feels pretty much like interacting with Google Maps, and we have this plot in what I assume is the human housing area, or to be more accurate, the Alliance, though it very much resembles human aesthetics here. We have vines growing over this like entranceway here, and also the house itself. I think the specific elements and the decor overall looks pretty dang good for being World of Warcraft. And with the way they advertise this, I'm pretty sure this is all customizable, so you can make it to your own like preferences, and the only real restriction is you have to go out and actually get these specific items. So I would imagine you would have to go out and find this specific fountain if you wanted to be placed here. But now let's venture inside the house and see what awaits for us inside here. We can see Anixia's head right over here. I remember a lot of people back in the day with Warlords of Draenor wishing we could mount things like Anixia's head on the wall of our garrison, and that content didn't really like measure up to what we wanted. But something interesting here is, unless we swapped factions, this looks to be a Horde-themed interior here for this house. We have an Orcish Horde shield with axes, a little troll gong that looks Zandalari to me, the important thing, which is the cheese board, and I think a hand grenade right there. Could be a honey dipper, but to me, I want to say it's a hand grenade. That is something that shall not be named. But I think what they're trying to showcase here is that even if you're playing the other faction, you can still have the interior of your house resemble the other faction. It's leaving the customization up in your hands as the player, which I think is absolutely the right call instead of being overly restrictive. And hopefully, as time goes on and they add more things to housing and continue to update it, we'll get even more customization options, so it doesn't just boil down to like, oh, you want a human house or an orc house or a troll house. I would like to see more aesthetic variety as we continue going on with housing, which seems to be the direction they're going in here. Again, I am pleasantly surprised by how high quality a lot of these assets actually are. Shout out to the random lobster we just have on this footstool, by the way. I don't know if I trust to eat it, but it's always important to have an emergency lobster, I guess. Oh, I can click on the map here to go to specific rooms as well, or at least specific points. Okay. There's like behind the counter. We have another lobster over here. We have a spice rack. Thank God. We have seasoning in here. Like a witch's cauldron as well. Oh, this is cool. This looks like they're using a couple of assets here to make something that resembles like a pipe. Like this looks like just a regular chunk of wood, but you use this other asset and you like edit it within that specific piece of decor to get the visual of what you would want here. Almost like a sink. That's pretty cool. There's gonna be so many people that get super creative when it comes to housing and just make some mind-blowing stuff. We got our booze corner and the other corner for books, and quite possibly the world's smallest watermelons. I need to verify, but I'm willing to hazard a guess and say that's the world's smallest watermelon. And then we have this giant expansive like library area. Again, this is up to you to create. Like you can edit these rooms, last I checked, when they talked about stuff like this, and it's so cool just to see what you can like mishmash together to create your own personal aesthetic and what you would personally want. I love how expansive these rooms are, or at least how they can be, with how tall the ceiling can be as well, and creating multiple different layers. This is again giving way for the player to express themselves within housing, and for a feature like this that is so pivotal, have as few restrictions as humanly possible and just let players go wild with stuff like this. We go upstairs, you can see the lighting here through the windows as well. It's so nice. As we go up the stair, the aesthetic starts to become a little bit more like Night Elven-ish, showcasing that you can have rooms with different aesthetics if that's your preference. And we have this giant corridor up here with a bunch of paintings. Shout out to Antonidas there. You can have little trees inside as well with different styles of paintings, a little fireplace as well. You can put out some books, another head. You know, I remember them saying Onyxia's head was going to be like a unique item, so maybe it's not specifically Onyxia, it's just like insert dragon head here. We're starting to blend like troll aesthetics alongside night elven furniture and decor. It's super cool what you can achieve with this. And then we have this like living space with another floor right above us. It's really cool how these houses aren't just limited to 2 floors. We can go up these stairs as well. And again, another giant ceiling. So it goes to show like what they talked about before. These houses aren't limited to the size they appear from the outside. The inside and the outside don't have to match. Just do what you want with them. And we can move all the way over to this room, which looks way more blood elven, which again just goes to show the visual variety you can have on display here. The ways you can like mishmash various elements together to get your own look that still feels like Warcraft. And this looks like more like a night elven bed to me, but with the way they've done the colors here, it works and fits. We can go all the way to the other side of the building here, and we have this room that looks like it's part of a cave with a totem pole over here. And again, just to showcase that you don't have to even have it look like a house on the inside necessarily. You can make it look like a cave if you want. And then you go outside, you can see like that's the house we were just in, and there's houses over there, another one right over there. And yeah, it just seems as if they're doing pretty much everything right when it comes to housing. It's truly impressive. I would never have thought you could do something like this in World of Warcraft with an engine that is this old. We got like a bedroom over here as well, with a more traditional human bed you might find in Goldshire. We're doing some math because we're a nerd. Antonidas is like looking on judgingly because our calculations are 0.111111% off. We have like a picture of Dalaran, never forget. And there's so many different rooms here, and I love how you can make them all look and feel so fundamentally different. It's like the only possible con I can maybe think of is that maybe the launch of housing is too limited when it comes to the aesthetics that are available to you. But you would imagine as time goes on and they bring more things online and add more things to housing and more pieces of decoration, more specific items and different aesthetics, that problem would eventually gradually go away and be eroded. I think housing looks absolutely incredible. Now, with the way that housing is set to actually work and function within World of Warcraft, we have a brief little summary here detailing a lot of the information they've gone over the past few months. So everyone gets a house, you don't have to worry about missing out or something. A little shot over at Final Fantasy XIV here, no lotteries, no cost, and no upkeep required. You share it across your warband, and you can even visit friends cross-faction. There's various different community hubs, so you can either go with a public one where it's just like any man for himself, and it's just a bunch of people thrown in one hub, or you can go for like a private neighborhood. You know, like neighborhoods with just your guild or a group of buddies. You can do stuff like that. And the way you actually acquire a lot of the decorations for housing comes from just playing the game. There'll be some things you can acquire within the housing system itself. We'll get into that in the next little bullet point endeavors. But also, regular content in World of Warcraft will provide you with housing content. Legion Remix Remix is set to actually provide quite a bit of housing stuff because, to my knowledge, there is a housing vendor up in the PTR for Legion Remix. And they talked about before how if you've already done a bunch of the older content, they'll have some way so when housing goes live, you'll just get a bunch of the stuff that comes as rewards from things that you've already accomplished in the game just immediately. And like, you'll just get them. So a bunch of older achievements, for instance, are going to be updated to also reward housing items. So you would imagine if you've already gotten those achievements, you're just going to log in and get those rewards. Endeavors are like little events specific for your housing hub. The monthly neighborhood-wide activities bring everyone together to complete tasks and unlock themed decorations. Watch your neighborhood evolve as NPCs arrive while the world around you changes. Now, you are not necessarily locked to the specific endeavor that shows up at your community hub. You can go to someone else's hub, and they might have a different endeavor, in which case you can then purchase the items they have. It's just you have to do the content to acquire the resource in order to spend on those decorations. Like the one in this picture, for instance, is based on Val'Sharah. So if you do that endeavor, you'll get a bunch of decorations themed after that zone. And then one of the most impressive elements for me is interior customization. You start with a basic floor plan, then unlock the ability to add more rooms and floors as you earn neighborhood favor. So it's not going to necessarily be available immediately. You'll have to work for it. But when you get it, you'll be able to just expand your house more and more and customize it more to your exact wishes and your own design. Now, an expansion is way more than just the zones we get, and while housing is a massive feature, it's not the only feature we're getting with Midnight. Now, the brand new open world piece of content, delves aren't going anywhere, this is being added on top of that, is Prey. Now, we're a little bit light on details for Prey at the moment, but the general idea for it is that you'll talk to this Blood Elf guy in Silvermoon for essentially a contract. As you can see here, sign up to pursue powerful targets across Azeroth and beyond, but beware, once on the hunt, your prey can strike you at any time. Basically, you pick an NPC to hunt, and as you're exploring the open world, you're doing quests, farming rares, whatever you're doing out in the open world, periodically, that target may pounce on you, ambush you, strike you at any time, and over the course of a couple of ambushes, it builds up to this big climactic finale. There are 3 difficulty modes associated with Prey, and Blizzard has more details about Prey on their Twitter, so here we are. You can see it's a new open world hunting system. Visit Astalor's lair in Silvermoon City and choose your difficulty, zone, and target. And then when you're actually on the hunt, you take a contract before you venture out. Once the hunt begins, your prey can strike at any time, whether you're mid-quest or simply fishing. There will be multiple ambushes leading to a final epic encounter. Epic. And you earn cosmetics, mounts, titles, and housing items for successfully hunting your prey. And these mounts look pretty sick. And there's like 3 difficulty modes for this, I believe. It's like normal, heroic, and nightmare. So if you want an easier experience, you pick an easier difficulty. You want a harder experience? You pick the hard mode. We have a new Demon Hunter specialization. So instead of getting a whole new class, we're just getting a new Demon Hunter spec. Devour. Fight Void with Void. Instead of Fell Energy, Devour Demon Hunters rip fragments of the Void straight from their enemies to unleash ranged Void abilities. It's supposed to be like a half and half, where it's like part melee and part ranged, and I believe the idea behind it is that you're supposed to try to make it so you stay in your Void metamorphosis form for as long as possible, which reminds me of the old Breath of Sindragosa playstyle Frost Death Knights have. On top of that, we have a new allied race, the Haranir. Think of them like a mixture between trolls and night elves. To me, they feel very much how I imagine the people from Avatar like, so if that's your aesthetic, they're gonna be probably for you. And the classes that the Haranir can be are warrior, hunter, rogue, priest, shaman, mage, warlock, monk, and druid. I wasn't really a fan of any of the Alliance shaman races model-wise, so honestly, I might go Haranir Shaman at least for the Alliance. And then, of course, we get a swath of new dungeons and raids. The raids are a little bit different this time, because instead of just getting a singular raid, we're getting 3. The 3 raids being the Void Spire, the Dream Rift, and March on Quel'Danas. The premise for the Void Spire is that the armies of the light have arrived and we're storming the walls of Xal'atath's stronghold. And then after that, we have the March on Quel'Danas. Following the events of the Void Spire, the skies over the Sunwell may never be the same. So it follows follows up on the story of that previous raid, the Void Spire, which is a very interesting premise to me. And then we also have the Dream Rift. With a veil between primordial dreams and brutal reality is thin, join the Shulka to hunt an undreamt god. We'll have to see how they go about balancing this, how they go about handling this. It seems like the intended path is that you do Void Spire first, and that transitions you into Marching Quell Danas, but I like the fact we're getting multiple different aesthetics here. I think that's rather neat. And we get 8 new dungeons. We have Windrunner Spire, Magister's Terrace, going back there, Murder Row, which is a location in Silvermoon, so that'll be rather interesting to see how they handle it. Den of Nalarak, which looks very interesting. And then we have to have a troll dungeon, right? We have Mysara Caverns, and we also have the Blinding Veil, and another dungeon called Void Scar Arena. And then the final dungeon, at least of the ones they put on Twitter, Nexus Point Zenas. A good host of different aesthetics. We'll also be getting some transmog updates. Save and show off your favorite looks with ease, and even set default appearances on your gear slots with updates to the transmogrification system. And then a new and returning player experience. This sounds decent in the short term, but I think for long term they still need a lot of work for this. But the general idea is that you do the new player island, and then you get a streamlined leveling experience through Dragonflight, and they don't say it here, but also like a streamlined version of the War Within story before you dive into Midnight proper. Hopefully it's a good way to get people up to date with things that are going on and the various important characters while not compromising on the actual story that is there. You seemingly won't be doing everything, it's just essentially giving you the important bits so that you can get into Midnight proper. And you also have the lore walking quest available with, Lore Walker Cho. We can get you up to date on specific elements of the story. We have 3 available so far, one with Xalatath, the other with the Ethereals, and another one for Office. And don't forget, alongside the dungeons and raids, we have new endgame content from the War Within with Delves. Delves aren't going anywhere. But also, before we get into the Delves, I want to just take a moment. My god, the lighting looks very nice in these pictures for the dungeons and the raids. Like, my god, like Mysara Caverns here with the lighting here on that one tree looks so dang good. We go down here to the Twilight Crypts and we have that like beam of light coming in from the roof. It looks so dang good. But say farewell to Bran Bronzebeard, who will no longer be our Delve companion. For Midnight, it's going to be Valera Sanguinor. Excellent choice, by the way. And we have various Delves for the expansion. The Shadow Enclave, Collegiate Calamity, Parhelion Plaza, The Dark Way, Twilight Crypts, Atalamon, The Grudge Pit, The Gulf of Memory, Sun Killer Sanctum, Shadow God Point, and then Torment's Rise, which is the Nemesis Delve, because for each of the seasons we get one big bad, a solo encounter that constitutes its own Delve, so the Torment's Rise will be that one for that. And we have a new PvP battleground, Slayer's Rise. Engage in epic 40v40 battles in the new Slayer's Rise battleground set in the Void Storm. This battleground features a push-pull dynamic along the path of predation. With side objectives to keep the action moving, players will need to strategize and work together to conquer bases and ultimately defeat the rival faction's Dominar, making Slayer's Rise a thrilling and strategic addition to the PvP experience. And then the pre-order stuff, right? The typical stuff we get nowadays, mounts, minions, transmog, traders, tender, but now also some housing items as well. So we get some paintings, some like gazebos, character boost, depending upon the version you actually get. It was bound to happen. So yeah, that's the new content coming into the game with Midnight. Very much an extension of the War Within, with a few additions here and there, a few major ones being prey and housing overall. But again, building off that foundation from Dragonflight and the War Within, which is what I think they should do. Add on to what already works and what exists, tinker with it to make it even better, and hopefully and ideally continue to tell an engaging and interesting story and to get better at it as time goes on. I hope Midnight is a step up from everything the War Within was, because it wasn't necessarily the most graceful expansion, story-wise, but I do think it largely worked. And a lot of the mechanics of the expansion can be rather hit or miss, but the main ones mostly hits in my opinion. And if Midnight is set to build off of that foundation, I think that's a smart direction for the game. Stop trying to throw away every new thing with each new expansion like they did for the longest time, and work on what already works and continue to build off of it. That is what they've been talking about, what they've wanted to do with the World Soul Saga. I'm glad to see that going in that direction. Thumbs up for me. And with that, I want to hear what you guys think. Leave a comment down below with what you are most looking forward to when it comes to Midnight and what you hope for the most out of this expansion. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And if you want to see more of my coverage for World of Warcraft, you should leave a like and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls. I have a Discord in the description down below. And if you want to see my reaction to the Intercession cinematic and the gameplay trailer for Midnight, you should check out this video right here. It was awesome. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. everybody. Until we meet again.